Welcome back to GTD. It was another great week of racing down in Homestead, Miami. Keegan, I know, was down there on the beaches. You were having a great time.
No, I was not.
Yeah.
I wish I was, though, because, it's one of my favorite races to watch, and I've never been to Miami, so I think it'd be fun just to be in Miami, one, but also it's always fun to watch.
I was in
cars
Kentucky. Notably different circumstances.
Yes.
However, still got to watch the race. I really enjoyed it. Typical Homestead, I think. Not anything that was going to live up to the crazy hype at the end of last year, but still good racing overall. Obviously, Kyle Larson came just one shy of the weekend sweep this week, won the truck race because Corey Haim's truck Windows dashboarded itself, then couldn't quite win the Xfinity race after getting slammed into the back of by Sam Mayer on a restart, and then managed to get this one done by passing Alex Bowman with 6 to go after Bowman made some contact with the wall. But first impressions from you, Keegan. What did you think about the finish? What did you think about the racing?
The finish, I kind of expected this to happen. Towards the after last green flag, even I think the first green flag run of pit stops in stage one kind of told the story. Larson was one of the guys who stayed out a little bit longer in the first run and had the newer tires at the end of stage one and could make up some ground. It was kind of very similar to what happened at the end. Was not very good in the short run. He even said that in his post-race interview, I think. The car wasn't good in the short run. Luckily, it was good enough in the long run. And it's Kyle Larson. You know, he was the most aggressive driver the entire race when it comes to ripping the wall.
And slide jobs.
Yeah, and they said, Clip Boyer said he was counting. He said like 18, 19 times he hit the wall. And that's all the ones that they caught on camera. That guy, but he wasn't hitting the wall like Bowman did. He was just kind of going, bink, bink, like you do in a sprint car when you're running the outside of dirt, which he's very good at. So it's no surprise to me that Larson won and got past Bowman there. But the racing, like you said, a little different than the very fantastical race we had last year. A little more aero blocking, I think, this year. I don't know if that was the tire, the grip level, and I think it was the track. I think the grip wasn't there like it was because it's a different time of year, different temperature. So I think it kind of forced people to have to run the high line instead of being able to run wherever they wanted to.
Yeah, what stood out to me was, especially in this race for sure, but over the weekend as well, more cars were going up to the high line sooner. You had less guys just ripping the bottom around like sometimes you see at Homestead, and I don't know if it is, like you said, the weather, if it's just everyone's figured out the high line is where you have to be, but it looked a little bit more like Kansas this weekend to me, where you have everyone trying to move up to the high line. And one thing I do want to say, I feel bad for Alex Bowman. Yeah. He's getting absolutely piled on and dunked on. Oh my gosh, fourth Hendrick driver, can never capitalize, get him out of the seat. He ran well. He sat on the pole, was in the top 5 for most of the day, and came home second. In what world is that a bad weekend?
Let's be real. If he didn't get into the wall,
Larson was getting past him. Like, Larson, if you just watch, was faster than him anyway. Yeah. So sure, maybe he could have put up a fight, but with the speed delta, what do you expect him to do? Run into Larson as he's trying to pass him and win that way? Because I know Mr. Hendrick's not going to be happy with that outcome.
Honestly, I'm glad he got past the way he did because it showed that he knew he would have to keep pushing and keep ever so closely nudging that car to the wall.
He didn't just sit on the bottom and get past.
Right.
He went up. He tried to make something happen. You didn't win, but you still came home second. And now Alex Bowman has the most top 10s of any driver in the Cup Series this season. So people piling on Bowman, go get your wheel knowledge checked because not it at all. But keeping with the drivers whose last names start with B thing, let's talk about
the theme this year.
Yeah, let's talk about the unluckiest man in the NASCAR field right now. That is Ryan Blaney. Yeah. 2 blown engines in the past 3 races, and this one, when he, let's face it, had an absolutely dominant car.
Oh, yeah. Fastest by far. I think Larson would have contended with him just because Kyle Larson's driving style. But I don't think it would have been enough, especially because he wasn't good in the short run. I think Blaney was good all around. I think Blaney would have just eked out a gap that no one could come
you saw stage 1, ended up winning it by like 8 seconds or something. Yeah. And I completely agree with you. I don't think the delta on the long run for Larson was big enough to overhaul just how crazy fast that Blaney car was for still like the first 35 laps of a run. It sounded like it was only a 5-lap shootout like we saw with Bubba's car at Vegas last week. So you got to feel bad for Blaney. And I don't know what it is with the Ford engines this year, but we saw it last year with Gibbs and Ty Gibbs especially. Yeah. This year, maybe it's the Fords. I don't know if they're trying to push more, and that's why we see some better speed overall from them, but
I was
it's
about
not
to
working
say,
out.
I could 100% see it being they're trying to get as much out of the engine because you've seen it with Wood Brothers. Now, it is a different driver in that seat, so we don't know how much of it is Josh Berry being Josh Berry.
And to be fair, he drove well again, just got bogged down by some pit kerfuffles.
Right. So, but how much of that performance out of the 21 car is coming from, if Penske is trying to just push that forward engine ever so slightly, and obviously they're not going to give Wood Brothers the one that they're pushing the most. They'll give it to their Logano or Blaney.
I think that's part of the reason you've seen this happen, because if they are trying to push harder and harder, you're going to give your best stuff to your best driver, and that is Ryan Blaney. So maybe if they're pushing the envelope a bit too far, that's why it's happening to the 12 car specifically. But just mentioned pit road. That was a big story today. Blaney also, his pit crew was not on it. Lost 8 spots on the last run before he blew the engine on pit road. Joey Logano and Josh Berry had the coming together. Granted, a narrow pit road, so a little more understandable, but still inexcusable. The Penske pit crews were not on it today. And then you had the scene with Josh Berry and Joey Logano both backwards in their respective pit boxes. Not really the way you want to be doing that. It wasn't necessarily a cataclysm day like we saw in Vegas on pit road, but still, it felt like some crews were slower than usual this week.
Yeah, it's interesting because you'd figure, okay, Daytona, they could be a little sluggish. Atlanta, still working through some things. But, by now, we're going into Martinsville. You should be, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And, we honestly, you saw this last year. There was a few teams who made changes, who cut people and put new people in and moved people from their development teams into their cup team. I think it was around the same time, race 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
There were lots of moving parts. So maybe it's just, I don't think it's just the new car because we've had it for so many years now. I just think it takes some time to get into the game mode.
Back in the rhythm, we'll have to see. But one pit crew I do want to give props to is a pit crew. I think if you asked someone last season, absolutely no one would tell you that Bubba Wallace's pit crew would be one of the top in the field, but they've been showing out.
Yeah.
And he gave him kudos after Miami too, said his guys have been great all year. Completely agree. That has been one of these standout teams on pit road. And honestly, Bubba's been one of the standout drivers of the year so far.
Yeah.
Hasn't necessarily had the finishes, but he's been so much faster than I feel like he usually is. More competitive within that team. Has had the pace on Tyler Reddick, you could argue, every race except COTA this year. And to come in and do that at Homestead, obviously I don't know what the car setups are, but regardless of car setup, Bubba flat outran Reddick at Reddick's best track. And I don't think that's being talked about quite enough. This is one of the most impressive races of Bubba Wallace's career for me in particular. Brought it home third.
Yeah, this was a guy who, before the season started, a few were kind of touching on the hot seat, or maybe with all the young talent and drivers you have coming up through the sport, is Bubba's position at specifically 2311 in danger, and he can go find a cup ride somewhere else, maybe like a Spire or a team like that. But I think those conversations have to be stopped now. I never really thought he was on the hot seat, but I'm not even going to entertain talk like that right now.
And I think a lot of that credit too, you have to look at Charles Deneke on top of the box, replaced Booty Barker for Bubba Wallace, and that's looked like an absolute home run for 2311 so far. The 23 car has speed. But speaking of guys that are doing well, let's jump over and talk about your current standings. William Byron stays at the top. Just consistency is key. Didn't get top 10 this week. Probably would have had it if not for a late speeding penalty, but still came home top 12, or I believe maybe 14th actually. No, top 12. Came home 12th. Yeah. Kyle Larson with the win moves up to second in the points. Alex
moved
Bowman.
up 4 spots, by the way.
Yeah, moved up 4 spots. Alex Bowman up to third. Yeah. And that leaves the question, who is the fourth Hendrick driver right now?
The fourth Hendrick driver is Chase Elliott, who a lot of people thought coming into this year, because the consistent year he had last year and just week after week after week he put down.
And the dominance at the Clash.
Right, and he was I think he ended up finishing third for regular season, but for most of the year was leading the regular season point standing, and him and Tyler Reddick were kind of going back and forth until Larson just kept winning. But yeah, he's the fourth Hendrick driver right now, which, he's the fourth driver out of the guys who are 1, 2, and 3.
I know it's a bit rough of a metric, but still, you look at he did not have a good car. He did not have a good car at Miami. Finished 18th.
Yeah.
Did not have a good car at Phoenix. Managed to grab a top 10 out of that, and didn't have a great car at Vegas either. So you start to wonder what kind of is the, I don't want to say the issue, because it's not like they're bad, but when you look at Elliott compared to his 3 teammates, they do seem to be lagging just that little bit behind. And we know Chase is a great driver, so you start to wonder what maybe the problem is.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit before we started rolling about maybe it's their guy on top. Maybe it's Alan Gustafson,
Which is crazy to say because Gustafson's been so good over the years, won with multiple different drivers. But at some point, I think if you're Hendrick Motorsports and you have what is supposed to be the face of your team, do you want another 2010s Dale Jr. situation where you have a guy that's supposed to be this highly touted great driver lagging behind as your 4th car? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I hopefully they can start to pick it up a little bit. I mean, they're 6th in standings. They have speed over other cars.
We're acting like the sky's falling. It's really not.
It's not like we're talking about anybody getting fired from this team. And I think they'll find speed and break through.
Mm-hmm. And kind of on that same vein here, I want to talk about a guy who I wouldn't say either of us have thought has had great cars all week, but every week you look up and he's 7th. And it's Chris Buescher, who magically ended up 6th at Homestead despite running 17th all day.
Yeah, it just appeared. Bang.
Currently is the highest Ford in the point standings in 9th after Ryan Blaney's cataclysms the past couple weeks. RFK has a meme they post every week that says the top 10 in factory does it again. What else can you call him at this point? He just appears.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you just said, appears. I mean, you'll just be watching a race, and then you won't ever see him, and then 40 laps to go, Chris Buescher's battling for some guy for 5th or 4th or 6th or whatever. He's got 4 top 10s. The only one who has more is Alex Bowman this year. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm okay with this. He was my preseason champ pick.
You're going for like what year was it where Ryan Newman just appeared in the Final Four by doing nothing?
Yeah, or like even Chase Elliott last year. There's just a consistency over the course of the year, and hopefully Chris Buescher's playoffs go a little better than Elliott's did last year.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean consistency with this new playoff format will get you a long way.
Yep, and speaking of playoffs, the bottom of your playoff picture right now, Chase Briscoe has jumped into the field up 7 spots thanks to his top 5 this weekend. I think we can both agree that was desperately needed for a guy who has had decent speed but struggled a little bit to start the year.
Yeah, hopefully he can get some momentum. Definitely a breakthrough weekend for him.
Yeah. Ryan Preece into the top 16 points now after back-to-back top 10s, came home 9th at Vegas. Michael McDowell still hanging right in there in 15th. Ross Chastain in 14th. Bounced out this weekend. John Hunter Nemechek and Ricky Stenhouse. I think we'd both agree that was just a matter of time.
And Kyle Busch.
Kyle Busch holds station in 17th. But one guy that I am very worried about right now, it's the guy sitting 30th in points. It is Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned his name because I was about to bring him up, especially after you mentioned Ryan Preece just nuzzling his way into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about the 17 consistency. Boom. Ryan Preece on the up and up, having good weekends, week in, week out. Have you been watching a race this year and seen that 6th car in the top 10?
No, he has 0 top 10s. Yeah. He's not been running top 10. He has 2 DNFs. You look at Homestead, he qualified like 32nd, I believe, and finished 26th. That car has been nowhere all year. I don't know what the deal is because it's not like RFK has great speed this year. I think we would agree. But the other 2 cars have just found ways to make it through the field at the end. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's bad adjustments. I don't know if they're just so bad off the truck they can't get it figured out. I don't know if maybe Brad's a little older now. You're starting to see some issues with his driving. But I have to think that Brad still at least knows how to pass cars. So I don't quite know what the deal is, but they sit down in 30th right now.
Yeah, I mean, the talent's there. I really don't have an answer. I don't think Brad has an answer right now. If he would be doing everything he can to fix it. It's very weird. It's weird that they have not had a single, top 10.
It's not like they've had rough luck at the end of races either. Other than Daytona, which I think is just Brad being Brad.
Yeah.
There's not a race he's been good. That car has not had speed.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be good at Daytona and Talladega for sure. But then again, you can also have, Cody Ware win that race. So
speaking of Cody Ware, currently still behind Jimmy Johnson in Cup Series points. Cody Ware has run all 6 races. Jimmy Johnson has run 1.
Yes, and that's your weekly Cody Ware update.
Yeah,
I know you've been waiting this whole episode to hear about Cody Ware.
Yeah, I know everyone's on pins and needles for that one. But is there anything else you want to go over before we wrap this up here?
No, I mean, hating on Brad Keselowski was what I wanted to end on, just because it's.
Oh, I thought you said hating on Brad. I was like, we're not hating on Brad.
Hating on him. That it's mysterious.
Yeah.
So I mean, hopefully he can work it out.
Yeah.
I really hope he can.
That's pretty much it. Again, just to recap on our predictions for the week. I had Tyler Reddick. He had Ryan Blaney. Mine was never good all day. His quite literally went up in smoke.
Yep.
Then for the dark horses, Carson Hocevar had top 10 speed all day. Got knocked out with an electrical issue. His 4th finish of 30th or worse this year. And then for me, AJ Allmendinger comes home 7th.
You're still not a top 5 from us this year.
Yeah, still no dark horse top 5s, but I think I now match your best dark horse finish with Gregson at Coda with a 7th, I believe.
Gregson at Coda.
So AJ Allmendinger, great day for him. Now holds the sole best average finish for drivers in the next-gen car at Miami, which, fun fact of the day.
Hey.
Maybe if you're looking at AJ Allmendinger next year, maybe... But that is it for the Homestead episode. We're going to have a MLB preview to get you ready for opening day. Later in the week, we're going to have a predictions vid for the next NASCAR race. As always, your Martinsville preview will be out later in the week. And then finally, the Formula One recap from this past weekend's Chinese Grand Prix will also be out, so be on the lookout for that as well. But for now, that's been Miami. This has been GTD. I'm Micah. He's Keegan. We'll see you guys later this week.